Morning, honorable members and our guests and the department and including the leadership of provinces.
Recording in
I
progress.
hope I'm visible. I'm audible, Mr. Sakaza.
Yes,
Am I
Chair,
audible,
we can hear you.
members?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, this is our meeting. In the last week, we had a briefing from the Auditor General because we are preparing for our BRRR presentation. I want to waste time in welcoming everybody. I see the DM is here. Welcome, DM. I will then ask, because we are racing, competing the space with load shedding. So what I will do, I'll quickly hand over to Mr. Sakaza to take us through the roll call of members and subsequently the department and guests that are here. Mr. Sakaza, can you take us through the roll call?
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and good morning to members. Yes, Chair, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good morning.
There's something wrong with you.
We can hear
Am
you,
I audible?
Zolani.
Sorry?
We can hear you. We can hear you, Zolani. Yeah, but I think
Mr. Sakaza,
yes, Chair.
can you get a better place? No, we can't hear you.
Can you switch off your
video?
Your screen. Yeah, your
okay.
video. Yeah.
Good morning, honorable members. Can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly from my yes, clearly from my side.
Can you hear me, Chair? Good morning, members. Today we have the following members of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor. We've got Honorable Chair, Honorable Junjwa. We've got Honorable Nonsele, Honorable Mdabe, Honorable Zuma, Honorable Volmarans, Honorable Begram, Honorable Kado, Honorable Mkondo, Honorable Denner, Honorable Ligoff. Chair, we have only received an apology from Honorable Makubele, who actually indicated that she might be in and out because she's traveling. And we also received a correspondence, Chair, that the Minister and the acting DG, Mr. Morotoba, they are in the cabinet meeting as we speak, so they won't be joining, but as you have indicated, the DM, Honorable Moloi, is here. And we also received another apology from two CDPOs, Chief Provincial Officers from the Eastern Cape. Ms. Dojek is not here today, and also Mr. Tladi from Limpopo. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Can we then get a correspondence? Who is leading the department?
Good morning, Chair. Honorable members. From our side,
good morning, DM.
Yes, Chair. From our side, COO Masha Bronkhorst will be leading the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, and good morning, honourable members. I'm sorry that I'm on my cell phone. For some reason, my other device has just gone crazy. I've heard the Secretariat, before I had to log out, I've heard him apologize already for the DG and the acting DG. I have present here today are all the DDGs except for the DDG IES. She is in Limpopo visiting the ZZ2 farm with the Secretary General of COSATU, and it was an arrangement that has taken quite some time to be made. But she has got a proxy in the meeting in the person of Ms. Millie Reuters, who's the Chief Inspector. The CDPO for Eastern Cape also is not in the meeting. She has got a staff member who passed on, and the memorial services this morning, it was the only time that the bereaved family could attend the memorial service. And then the CDPO for Limpopo is also not in the meeting. He's accompanying the Inspector General to ZZ2. Both of these CDPOs have sent proxies to the meeting, Chairperson, and then the other members, I think, have been acknowledged, and the CDPOs, all the other CDPOs are in the meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I see the Executive Director of Nedlac's hand is up. What is it?
Yes, thanks, Chairperson. I just wanted to introduce the delegation from Nedlac today. It is myself, Farhan Samsudin, the CFO, Nubuntu Sabisi, Executive Manager, and Lebahang Mulawisi, the COO from the PCC. Thanks.
Thank you. I think you were cut off. We've got a problem with network today. Are there any guests that are here that we must know? Mr. Sakaza.
Yes, Chair, I do see names that I don't recognize. Maybe they should just introduce themselves, and also PMG is here.
I see the office of the if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Koia. Can you please indicate from which office you are from, so that we are aware?
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, and other guests. I'm Bulela Sikoia. I'm from the Auditor General. I'm with Ms. Nana Shai, representing the HSA. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And the person from PMG?
Good morning, honorable members. My name is Plang Sudira, and I'm with the Portfolio Monitoring Group.
Thank you. Having said that, you'll indicate who are the other people. You will see the other people that have not introduced themselves Zolan. And I don't know why people don't want to introduce themselves. Those that are supposed to introduce themselves. And if
good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, yes. Chairperson and the honorable members, the Deputy Minister. My name is Ongem Jo, and I'm the Chief of Staff in the Office of Minister of Employment and Labour. I also have with me Mr. Lumkom Timde, who is the advisor, a special advisor to Minister of Employment and Labour. Mr. Thando Wababa would be here. He's the Parliamentary Liaison Officer for the Minister of Employment and Labour. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mucho. Thank you very much. We are not going to waste time. We see that we have got problem of load shedding. Myself also, I'm in between my gadgets. I don't know what is happening. I was once cut, and I quickly had to join and come back to this. I will hand over to DM if you don't have any, if you do have a overview, so that after that we then allow the department to make its presentation. Over to you, DM.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. I hope you are able to see my face. I don't see myself. I don't know. But
we don't see you. We see somebody with a cap and a green, blue, whatever. Please, can you correct that? Yes.
No, this is my staff, honorable chairperson, because they are here with me to help me with my gadgets. So if you allow me also to switch off, I wanted you to see me that I'm not a robot, but I'm with my PA office, where I am here now. If you allow, Chair, on behalf of the minister, as the apology has been forwarded, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and honorable members of the committee, our COO and senior management of the department and entities that are here today. Good morning once more. I think we want to, as the office of the minister, as the ministry, we want to emphasize, normally the minister always say that we recognize the authority and the important role that is played by Parliament, and this in particular, and in the oversight of the executive and the bureaucracy, holding us all to account all the time. So we want to acknowledge that first and foremost. So we are here today, Honorable Chairperson and members, to present the annual reports for 2022-23 financial years. And the minister, as you are all aware, that he's in the cabinet. Therefore, Mayor Masha Bronkhorst will take us through. But just to brief the portfolio committee that about what we are presenting today, which is the report on the department itself, annual report, and the SEE, which is our employment services, employment and enterprise, which is attached to our department. Therefore, and including Nedlac's report will be the ones that are presented today, and those that of other entities will be presented on Friday. We just wanted to overemphasize what Minister normally says, Honorable Member, about the reports that are always late, which have not been audited, which we all know about, of both the funds, the UIF and the compensation fund. And we would not want to say much about that, because I think honorable members know, and I'm sure the Office of the General will say something about it. Suffice to say that we have interventions regarding a number of issues as raised by the Office of the Auditor General in this regard, which are intended to enhance financial systems and controls and financial accountability, and to revamp all the required skills reconfigurations of the fund, as well as assisting with the implementation of the audit action plans and all remedial action plans. We will update the committee when these are on the agenda. So for today's purpose, I'm sure overall the department is improving. There is a huge improvement on performance, but we see we have concerns. What concerns us greatly also on repeat findings that are happening or hearing, more so in the ICT environment and other non-compliant findings, the issues of poor or lack of implementation of the audit action plans, and lacking in consequence management thereof. So we, as from the ministry, we are strongly pushing all officials, honorable members, starting with the accounting officer, to change the manner of doing things because we all know we can never do the same things repeatedly and expect different results. And there should be change in the manner in which the audit action plans are implemented. And that's the posture that we are taking from the executive, that we need to instill different attitudes towards remedial actions that has to be adopted. And it goes without saying, Honorable Chairperson, that the prescripts of financial management and auditing must be adhered to, including the Public Finance Management Act 1 of 1999 and the Public Audit Amendment Act of 5 of 2018. So the SEE, Honorable Chairperson, despite the unqualified audit opinion and its performance, it's also of concern to us in respect of other areas as highlighted by the Auditor General's report. But we want to elevate the fact that CCMA's performance, management and governance is exemplary. And I'm sure we are all impressed by its annual report, and we will get such a report on Friday. We note also areas raised by Labour in respect of outstanding legislation, but at least with respect to the Department of Employment and Labour, our legislative programs are not lagging behind. We hope to encourage all social partners to work together and improve on all processes. So that is the concern that we have, that we seem to be tracked by us within Nedlac, but we are hoping that the processes will be concluded. I hope also that our committee will get the opportunity, as always, Honorable Chairperson, to challenge us on topical issues. We know, especially with respect to the productivity as a leadership, when the opportunity arises, and when we are called upon to come and appear and account, and we will at the time, the opportune time, take the honorable members into confidence into things that are in the public domain. But we are happy, though, that the minister did take on board the committee the last time. We will continue to update the committee as a prerequisite progress. As per requisite progress at the right time. And today, I'm sure we would agree that let us focus on the department, Nedlac, and the SAE. But safe to say that the status quo on the issues relating to the department and the UIF on the Tuja agreement remains as reported the last time. The forensic report regarding the agreement signed by the department, the UIF and Tuja Holdings is still being discussed with the president and the minister. And we have implemented some of its recommendations as it is required. But I must say that as an example, in the main, we take some comfort from the new initiatives introduced over the last 2 years, and believe that positive results will be reflected from the 2023-2024 cycle. So, Chairperson, honorable members, the officials, Marsha Bronkhorst will get into the details, if you allow, of all the annual reports, and I thank you.
Thank you, DM. Over to you, Marsha.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to show you I'm indeed here, but I'll also then take the video away if you don't mind, Chair, because of challenges that I'm having. I've explained it already. Chair, thank you. Our presentation will take the following order, if acceptable to the committee. I'll do the performance information for the department. Thereafter, the CFO, Mr. Maduna, will do the financial reporting, and we'll allow the SEE CEO to also do presentation for SEE, so that all of us who are responsible get an opportunity to talk and not just my voice is heard. Chairperson, our presentation is shared by Matapelu, who I think I forgot to acknowledge during the introduction of members. So if we can allow Matapelu just to get the presentation ready. I'm going to refer to the presentation, which is marked Annual Report 22-23, the audited report. I'm also going to, members would have noted that I've made two presentations. The one was for the presentation purposes, and the second one was one with much more information around our performance, the impact the department has made, etc. There, I'm only going to refer to two slides, which I feel would be of value to members of the committee to look at in detail. So on the first slide, I would like to just again re-emphasize is slide number 3, and that talks about the legends of the presentation. Members will recall that quite some time ago as a department, we took a decision that we will not reflect on in progress, because to us in progress simply means an achievement has not been made, it's not complete. So anything that is marked not achieved means it might be in progress, but because it was not completed, it's not deemed to be achieved. On the next slide, slide number 4, we have an overview of the annual performance for this financial year under review. And the department's performance here, members can see, has improved to 72% achievement of our targets and our indicators. We had 29 annual targets, of which we achieved a total of 21, and not achieved were 8. If we move to slide number 5, the very next slide, there I given a quarterly performance per branch for the financial year to members to have a sense of where we are lying in terms of our performance. Now, in Q1, you will see that the branch that was consistent in Q1 getting 100% was PES, as well as in Q2, as well as in Q3. However, in Q4, they performed at 83% level, and members will recall that was the issue around the national labour migration policy and the employment policy, which had not at that stage reached the levels that they were expecting it to reach. The performance for the department then in Q1 was lying at 71%. It went up to 91% in Q2. In Q3, it was at 95%. Q4 was 85%, and then the cumulative performance was lying at 72% for the financial year. If we move to slide number 6, there is a performance, the annual performance per program of the department comparative between 21-22 financial year and the 22-23 financial year. And members can see that administration had an overall performance of 63% in the 21-22 year, and it had a slight decrease to 56% in the financial year we are reviewing. Inspection and enforcement services had a performance level of 25%, and members will recall this was the year that we had the fallout of COVID-19 and the inspectorate and the inspections that could not take place. However, they improved their performance in the year 22-23 to 100%. Public employment services stayed at 83% performance. It was a constant performance, and as did labour policy and industrial relations, moving to 70%, which brought our performance from 64% in 21-22, improved it to 72% in the financial year that we are looking at. The next slide, excuse me, the next slide that I would look at is slide number 8. This one gives us the annual performance trends from 2019-20 to 22-23. And here, 2019-20, we all know that was the disastrous COVID year. We achieved a performance of, that was before the COVID year. We achieved a performance of 79%. Then 2021, our performance went down, and as did 2021 and 21-22, it started creeping up again. And this year that we looked at, as I said earlier, we're lying at 72%. If we move to slide number 9, this is just a graph to give us a sense of what the performance per quarter was, our performance trend. We reached an all-time high in Q3 of 22-23 of 95%, followed by Q2. So there is an upwards creep, albeit a little bit slower than we would have wanted it to be where we are now. On slide number 10, I'm giving just a breakdown of the performance of the provinces, seeing that we have the provincial chief directors present in the meeting. On the left-hand side is the IES performance at the end of the financial year, and to the right is space. You will note that Limpopo and Northern Cape did not achieve their indicators. Members will be aware that Northern Cape has been struggling for quite some time in terms of achieving their IES targets. On the right-hand side, with public employment services, it is Gauteng and Limpopo which have failed to achieve their targets for the financial year under review. Chairperson, I would now like to move to programs and areas of performance and non-performance for the programs. The slide I'm going to look at is slide number 13. And this is for program administration, which is program 1. Members will recall that we've for a long time had challenges with the filling of vacancies in the department and having or running at a relatively high vacancy rate. So I decided to give us a breakdown, a graphical breakdown to show that indeed there is some movement in the filling of the vacancies. Of concern, clearly, is the SEE, which is lying at a very high level of vacancy, 15% at the end of the financial year, and the compensation fund, which also was lying at, although they were under the target, they for the whole year were running at a fairly high level of vacant posts. The similar was with Gauteng, Limpopo to a lesser extent, but Northern Cape and Northwest were also lying above the target where we would have wanted them for the whole of the year. Although in Q4 they pulled up their socks and managed to reach the target for the financial year. If we move to slide number 14, I'm going to look particularly at the underachievements for program 1. Members will recall last week when we had the audit colleagues from the Auditor General presenting to you, they raised the issue of cybersecurity and their concerns around cybersecurity. And indeed, this is also one of our underachieved targets. The cybersecurity strategies and the roadmap had not yet been finalized because there was some additional work that had to be done. Then the second matter that was not achieved was the IAS and PES systems, which had to be replaced with the new systems that we have. This was also, there were also extensive delays in finalizing this, and it did not happen by the time frames. The ethics management plan for the year, it has not yet been approved, although the draft has been finalized. The sign-off was not in the financial year, and therefore we could not count it as having been achieved. And then the resolution of our reported incidents by disciplinary and criminal interventions. Not all cases are finalized within the required timeframes because of capacity constraints. We do find that some of the cases are more complex, and sometimes we have to use skills from outside to assist us in the investigations, and that causes delays in finalizing these cases. On the next slide, I would just like to stop for a moment at our achievement in terms of the vacancies. As I said earlier, we were battling to fill our vacancies. We started the year at a 9.65% vacancy rate, and we ended the year at 7.14%, which was lower than the target that we set for ourselves. And then one of the other achievements that I would like to bring to the attention of the committee is that we set ourselves a target for this financial year of having 45% of our senior management positions to be occupied by women. And we have achieved 47% of our senior management positions are occupied by women. And we have gone out on a concerted effort and drive to make sure that we get capable women to fill the senior management positions for the department. The next slide talks to the underachievement, which I have already alluded to. So I would like us to, if for fear of repeating just go then to inspection and enforcement services, which would be on slide 22. I have the slides from 16 to slide number 20 have already discussed the matters there. Slide 22, please. Matapelu. 22. So this is inspection and enforcement services. I think the slides have got a bit of a lag, but it'll move to slide 22. I would like to talk about the achievement for the inspectorate. They had, first and foremost, before I come to the achievement in terms of the targets and indicators, members will recall that the inspectorate for years, for the last 5 years that I could recall, have had severe audit findings around their performance information, and that there were challenges around the validity and the usefulness thereof. I'm very happy to say that last year they had a clean audit in terms of performance information. And this, I know, came with a lot of hard work from the program to make sure that the performance information as it is generated on at the labor centers right through up is correct. So I would just like, this is something that I think they are very proud of, the fact that they've managed to get a clean audit in terms of, if we think how many times one piece of information changes hands, it could be up to 8 times, and the margin for error is substantial. So let's look then at the performance of inspection and enforcement services. They had a target of 298,104,000 inspections, which they have surpassed with 14,688. And they also have served the employers who were non-compliant. The target was 95% of these employees had to be served with notices within 14 days. They've served 98% of the non-compliant employers within 14 days. If we move then to the performance in terms of IAS in the provinces on slide 14, slide 24. The next one, please, Matapelu. Here, members can clearly see where the challenges are, although the branch has overachieved with 14,000 plus. The 2 provinces that did not meet their targets put strain on the other provinces who had to clearly achieve more in order for the branch to get to the targets that are indicated. And here members can see that Limpopo, Northern Cape, and this was with the total number of inspections that had to be done by the provinces. I'm going to look at public employment services next, and that would be on slide 28. And this is the reason for underperformance for the branch, as I alluded to earlier, with the national labor migration policy. The consultation processes that they took place got a much higher level of inputs than what was expected, and they could not incorporate it on time, in time for the timeframes that they set for themselves. And at the end of the financial year, the preparations were underway for the policy to be tabled at the different committees, Parliament, Cabinet, and so forth. And then with, regarding the national employment policy, you will know that we're working in partnership or with assistance from the ILO. And then there was a delay in appointing of the service provider, as well as the final certificate, which was to be issued by the presidency to enable us to draft the policy. Chairperson, I'd just like to focus on one slide from PES in terms of the performance of provinces and the underperformance of provinces, and that would be slide 29. Thank you. Here we can see that Gauteng, you will recall when I did the introductory slides, Gauteng was underperforming in terms of the registration of work seekers, as well as Limpopo province. But because the other provinces did more than what was expected of them, the branch managed to achieve all that particular indicator and all the other indicators. Chairperson, that takes care of the branch public employment services. I would then like to focus on labour policy and industrial relations on slide 36. So you will recall that they have achieved only 70% of their indicators. And here are the reasons for the underachievement. Firstly, was the employment equity regulations. They had to be finalized and published, but they were not published because at that time, the promulgation of the act had not, the bill had not been assented into law, and we could not go out and publish before that had happened. It has subsequently happened, but at the end of the financial year, it did not happen. And then collective agreements, 90% were extended to non-parties. The indicators is 100%. And these delays were caused by internal, external factors. For example, the applications, the documents that are submitted to the program are not necessarily always complete. And then it's a toing and froing to get the correct documents from the applicants. And that causes delays because the time starts being counted from the date of receipt of the first set of documents. And then the annual implementation report was delayed in a sign-off. It was due to have been signed off in 30 April, but it was only signed off the month thereafter because of the involvement of the officials in the child labour conference. I think what they were of the view this is the first child labour conference ever on African soil. And they went all out. We did not use the events management company, and we did all the events and the planning for this conference ourselves. Chairperson, I'm going to leave the finances, as I said, to the CFO. There's just 2 slides from the other presentation that I prepared that I would like to bring to the attention of the committee. And if we just allow Matapelo, it is slide 8 and slide 25. The rest of the information is available, and I think it's so comprehensive that it'll take us the whole day if I have to work through those slides. But slide 8 is of particular importance because we know that employment equity continues to be a challenge, and compliance of employers to employment equity continues to be a challenge. The next one, please, Matapelo. The slide with the numbers. There we are. Members can see that the target was 3,324 inspections. The inspectorate managed to do 4,725, but the devil is in the details of the compliance. Here we can see that about 55% only of employers were complying, and that 2,016 notices were issued. So clearly there is still a lot of work that has to be done in this area. And the inspector, they are doing it, and with amendments, it would make it easier for the department now to ensure compliance. The last slide I would like to focus on, Chairperson, is slide 25. And this is just to give members a sense of the monies that the inspectorate have recovered for on behalf of workers. Now, you will be aware that we don't take money, but this is money that was paid to the workers by the employers after inspections. It's slide 25, Matapelo. I suspect, again, the lagging issue, Chairperson, so I'm going to talk about it. In terms of our biggest success in terms of direct payments to workers was recoveries in terms of the National Minimum Wage Act. Here, there was a substantial amount. Sorry, Chair, I just want to, it's running backwards, so I'm sorry, we will have to, I'll talk through this slide because it seems as if there's a challenge with the system. It's slide 25, Matapelo, not 15. So as I was saying, the National Minimum Wage Act, we had the biggest number of recoveries there, and there was an amount of 45,716,000 that was recovered on behalf of workers from employers who were underpaying the workers. And then followed by the BCEA, where we recovered 14 million, just over 14 million on behalf of workers, which means that about 60 million was recovered for underpayment of wages to workers and paid to these workers. In terms of contributions to the compensation fund, We have had recoveries of 71 million of employers. Thank you. There's the slide. 71 million that was recovered from employers to be paid into the fund, and then recoveries from the Unemployment Insurance Contributions Act, 2 million, and the Employment Equity Act, 1 million. And then here on the right-hand side, you will also see occupational health and safety recoveries of 13 million. The province that has had the biggest level of recoveries, you can see here on the table, is KZN, particularly the national minimum wage, just under 29 million rands that was recovered on behalf of workers, followed by the other provinces, as you can see, Northwest with 9.5 million and so on, going down. Chairperson, I would like to end my presentation here and, with your approval, ask the CFO to do the financials for the financial year 22-23. Thank you very much.
Good.
Hello, Chair.
Good
Hello,
morning.
Chair. I'm trying to activate the chair.
Morning. I was cut. I'm back. Thank you. You can continue, sir.
Good morning, honorable members. Chair, I'm going to present the DELF financial information that is included in the annual report.
If you can you switch off? Sorry, if you can you switch off your video so that?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Starting with the financial year audit outcome.
Masha, can this? Okay.
The audit outcome for the department for the 2022-23 financial year was the unqualified audit with material findings. The material findings were on financial statements, expenditure management, consequence management, and procurement and contract management identified through the audit that hindered the department from obtaining a clean audit. In terms of the expenditure analysis for the department, out of the allocation of 4.1 billion, the department managed to spend 3.897 billion. That translated to 95% spending. The underspending was 210 million, which is distributed as follows. Administration could not spend 57.4 million. Inspection and enforcement services, 29.4 million could not be spent. Public employment services, 102.5 million could not be spent. This is mainly the expenditure that was transferred to GTech for pathway management services. LP and I, labor policy and industrial relations, could not spend 21 million of their allocation. That gives us the total of 210.6 million underspent, which translates to 5%. Next slide. The next slide explains the reasons for underspending per programs, which mainly sits at compensation of employees, goods and services, and capital expenditure,
and payment for financial assets, mainly due to bad debts written off, specifically to, I think, the write-off of our motor vehicles that now and then get involved in accidents. Next slide. You'll give us the inspection and enforcement services, 29 million. Also on compensation of employees, goods and services, and capital, underspending mainly due to delays in delivery of the procured ICT equipment on inspection and enforcement services. Next slide, public employment services, 103 million. COE, goods and services, transfers due mainly to the claims of injuries and delays on the last tranche transfers to GTAC, the one that I've mentioned earlier. That was the chunk of the underspending under public employment services, and some few hundreds underspending mainly due to delays in delivery of laptops on capital expenditure. Next slide. Labor policy and industrial relations, 21 million. Also, some few vacancies on compensation of employees, goods and services, transfers, and capital expenditure as well. Next slide. In terms of the financial year audit outcome, in terms of the economic classification, the current payment were allocated 2.1 billion, transfers and subsidies 1.8 billion, payment for capital assets were allocated 137 million, payment for financial assets, debts and losses is 553. It gives us the total allocation in terms of the classification of our budget in terms of expenditure. 96% for current payments, transfer and subsidies amounts to 94% of our allocation, and payment for capital assets, the expenditure was 95%, payment for financial assets 100%. And that analyzes the amount that was not spent in terms of the economic classification. The next slide, I think this slide tried to simplify that a sizable amount of our allocation of 4.1 billion. The sizable amount of it goes to transfers and subsidies. So the total the amount that is available for the department to spend, out of that amount, we could not spend 96.1, which translates to 95.8% when we deduct the transfers and subsidies that is allocated to our entities. Next slide. This is the summary of the audit findings for 2022-23. I think the presentation that was done by the Auditor General together with the audit committee summarized this one very well, but we also I've also included it in this presentation to indicate the comparative from 2021-22, where we had 56 findings, and the various sections of the department, their allocation of the findings out of the 59, and also the progress made from 21-22 to 22-23, where it was reduced to 49, together with the allocations to various programs of the department, and the indication that was indicated that the Chief Information Officer had a sizable number also is confirmed in this table. I think it was delivered fairly well last time. I will just probably indicate that. And I think that concludes the presentation on on finances. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you. I don't know whether you would want us to proceed to SEE or would you first want to allow questions, Chair?
No, proceed to SEE, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The CEO for SEE, Mr. Pakati, will do the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson, our Honorable Deputy Minister who is leading us today, and the honorable members of this committee and the senior leadership of the department. May I ask Ms. Mataboge to flight the presentation? But while she's flighting, Chairperson, Support and Employment Enterprises as one of the public entities is also enjoined by Section 55 of the Public Finance Management Act to submit its annual financial statements to National Treasury. And to the best of my recollections, SEE has prepared and submitted its annual financial statements year on year without fail. Today, we present both the annual financial statements and the annual performance report for fiscal year 2022-23. If I may ask Ms. Mataboge to go straight to slide number 3, please. I'm not too sure if I may request the Secretary to go to slide number 3 of our presentation. If members can confirm, because I don't see the slides on my side, if we can beam slide number 3 from SE presentation. May I request that Matapelo beam our presentation? Okay, Chairperson, in the interest of time, I'm sure members have received the presentation itself, so I will just continue. But and I must say that 2022-23 fiscal year is the year that the entity showed demonstrable load shedding, which adversely impacted on our operational efficiencies and the general economic hardships, which have made it difficult for most entities to recover and emerge completely in the post-COVID period. Thank you so much, Ms. Mataboge. If we can go to slide number 3. So if we look at our annual performance plan, we delivered on our legislative mandate as we employed a total number. If we can go to slide number 3. Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Mataboge. So if we look at our annual performance plan, we delivered on our legislative mandate as we employed a total number of 50 persons with disabilities as per our predetermined objective, or target rather, for the year under review. So we delivered on that. We also posted an incredibly good numbers on the overall sales performance growth. Our predetermined target was 10% growth based on previous financial year. But in the end, we posted an outstanding 88% sales revenue growth for fiscal year 2022-23. Chairperson, the Auditor General confirms the validity of our performance reporting in paragraph 19 to 24 of our management report that SE is mandated priority in terms of economic transformation and job creation. And the rest of SE performance reporting, the AG did not identify any material findings. Therefore, this confirms the validity of our performance information. We're going to go to the next slide. Next slide, Chairperson, I must say that as management of SEE, we've been deliberate and intentional in turning SEE around. And if anything, this slide bears testimony that indeed in 2022-23 fiscal year, we managed to turn SEE around. And as members can see, in 2020-21 fiscal year, SEE was declining at minus 67% in sales revenues. In 2021-22 fiscal year, we managed to arrest the decline by half to minus 33%. However, we're still declining. And in 2022-23, we managed to turn around the fortunes of the entity by posting a whopping 88% sales revenue growth. This reflects that as management of SE were driven purely by enterprise, ingenuity, sound judgment, and effectiveness. I'm reflecting on these honorable members to showcase that not everything is wrong. Yes, we have challenges that are there, but in most critical areas around our primary objectives, we are moving forward in faith and with conviction to grow the entity so we can respond to the crisis of unemployment in our country. If you can move to the next slide. The next slide really showcases the recovery in the post-COVID period, as we can see that we almost doubled the number of employment opportunities in 2022-23 fiscal year relative to 2021-22 fiscal year. Chairperson, this is another sign of recovery, as we enabled 50 families to put food on the table, and we intend to triple that number to 150 in the current fiscal year. This reflects the confidence we have in our entity and the unswerving commitment to serve our country and our citizens. And if you can proceed to the next slide. I think the next slide later reflects the major contributors to the sales revenue growth of SEE. They've contributed to augmentation of our total revenue, since we have an underfunded mandate that has been exacerbated by austerity measures. However, based on our strategic imperatives, which include customer acquisition and retention, we shall continue with this upward trajectory. So we can proceed to the next slide. The next slide really deals with our major operational risks for the year under review. Yes, thank you so much. I must say that load shedding nearly crippled our production output, since we had no alternative energy source during the year under review. And there are other factors around the fuel price increases in the raw material prices, are some of the factors that impacted on us, and the fact that we are operating within a highly regulated environment, it makes it even more difficult to make quick decisions to respond to such realities. But I must say that as management of SEE, we've done everything possible to make sure that we manage these risks, and we have our CECO meetings on a weekly basis to ensure that all of these variables, we apply our attention to detail to make sure that some of these areas or some of these risks are mitigated and rectified. You can move to the next slide. This is basically the impact analysis. It showcases that as at the end of the financial year that is under review, we had a total number of employees of 948, but for that particular period, that particular quarter, we managed to employ 19 persons with disabilities additional. And you can see that Gauteng, we managed to absorb 8, and around the Western Cape it was 5, and in the Eastern Cape it was 6. And members, this is just for the last quarter, but the entire year period, as I mentioned earlier on, that we employed a total number of 50 persons with disabilities. You can move to the next slide. The next slide is basically the split per province. As members would know, that we've got a national footprint, but this is just to reflect that the number of persons with disabilities that we employed in those factory operations. You would notice that in provinces like Gauteng, be high numbers because we've got more than one factory. Like in Gauteng, we've got 3 factories. In Western Cape, we've got 2 factories. Eastern Cape and KZN, we've got 2 factories. And in other provinces, we only got 1 factory. Hence, the numbers would look like they're imbalanced, but it's because of the kind of operations we have in each province. We can move to the next slide. Yeah, the next slide basically showcases the SE Equity Progress Report. Since we understand that the major crisis around unemployment is basically on the youth, and as management, we've worked very hard to ensure that we work closely with special schools across the country to make sure that we absorb those children from the schools of excellence. Hence, you'll see that 37% of our total employees at SEE is from the youth, and we continue to drive that very, very intentionally. And as you will see that I think our CEO mentioned the department's commitment to get as many women in senior leadership position. We also are trying to make sure that in our factories, we get to balance those numbers. As you can see, the female employees are around 41%. We're not there yet, against the male employees at 59%. But it's basically what we intend doing to make sure that there is a balance in terms of those numbers. But I must say that we wanted to uplift that 37% is now youth, because we focus on the future. But at the same time, we're trying to balance to make sure that we do not exclude anybody, because if we want to balance our economic fortunes, we've got to make sure that we do that very carefully to make sure that we don't disrupt the current status quo, but we seek to improve it. Next slide, please. Yes, this slide showcases to the members that SCE has a major responsibility to balance between the rigorous business fundamentals and also social imperatives. So we are kind of a social enterprise because we've got to make sure that we're efficient. We've got to make sure that we run the entity as a business. At the same time, that investment is then invested into making sure that our people are back at work. We increase the productive capacity of the country and the capacity utilization as well. So it sometimes becomes very difficult because it is a regulated environment. We are expected to drive efficiencies. At the same time, we must make sure that we balance that with the social expectation that the legislation bounds to do. So it's basically to showcase to members that it sometimes becomes a difficult task, but we are up to the task. Next slide, please. The next slide, I think we're going straight to the financials. Yes. If members look at this slide, which is basically the financial executive summary, we received a total grant of 166 million from National Treasury. But if you factor the cost of employment of both the factory employees, which is 96 million, and admin employees, which is 80 million, which gives us a total of 176 million. This immediately shows a deficit of about 10 million rand before we even include our mandatory expenses, which were around 19.8 million, and other general expenses of around 25 million. Hence, as management, we felt the inescapable responsibility to drive budgeted sales revenue to aid our underfunded mandate. Hence, we asked from various departments to buy directly from SCE to help capitalize the employment of persons with disabilities. So this basically reflects the challenge that in as much as we get a grant from Treasury, it goes straight to salaries. The biggest percentage of it goes straight to cost of employment. And we're still left with the responsibility to run 13 factories across the country, which requires a lot of financial injections to make sure that our operations are efficient. We can move to the next slide. Yes, it's basically a reflection, like I mentioned, that the biggest cost of SE is basically our COE cost. As you can see, the factory COE is at 57% and admin COE at 48%. So that takes the entire Treasury grant, and which leaves our mandatory expenses, which are not necessarily related to production costs, that we have to make sure that we look at those. As you can see, the deficit before administrative operating costs at 27 million already. So that is why we're harping on driving our budgeted sales target to make sure that we generate as much sales revenue as possible to augment the deficit that is reflected on these figures. And as you can see, the bottom table is showcasing the growth that I've reflected on earlier on. In as much as we are growing at 88%, but it's not nearly enough for us to augment our grant from National Treasury. But we continue to seek to grow our customers and to request everybody to support us in terms of buying from us so that we can augment this and extend opportunities to persons with disabilities. We can move to the next slide. The next slide basically says similar reflection. You see, when it comes to our production and output, basically our challenges still remains around the cost of sales, which includes production costs, fixed and variable costs, and manufacturing overheads. And that's basically where you'll see, as you can see, that even though we actually collected over 51 million rand, but if you look at our cost of sales, it's ridiculously way over, which eats out from our sales revenue. It is something that we seek to correct, and it's more complex than it looks, because I mean it's been a repeat audit finding as well for a couple of years now. So it's something that we are applying our attention to detail to make sure that we get to the root cause of it, so that we can be able to correct that. But part of the reason is really to make sure that our factory operations across the country are operating at full capacity, because the capacity utilization of our factory also impact on the kind of assets we have and the utilization thereof. So we're looking at that very closely. But again, it simply reflects that our grant allocation, which is 84%, is not nearly enough to really aid SEE in terms of its mandate. We can move to the next slide. The next slide is basically, I think it's around our areas, yes, our audit qualification areas. And I must say that SEE ended on adverse opinion, but the basis for adverse opinion, honorable members, as we scrutinized the root causes, was mainly around the mapping of our financial information from CISPRO, which is a system we use in the manufacturing space, to Caseware, which is a system for financial reporting. The transfer of information led to misalignment of information as it was being mapped in the Caseware system. Now, this led to a number of misstatements, which the AG allowed us to do some adjustments on some, and others we could not do those adjustments. So it was around those system issues, but we do acknowledge that because there was an engagement letter from the AG, so we do understand why we're not allowed to do all the adjustments, because we had in principle been informed based on that engagement letter. However, we do not discount that we still have issues that we need to fix around the inventory, like I mentioned earlier on, cost of sales, payables, and receivables, and the new funding, which is basically contingent liabilities. But it's something that we are working on. There is an audit action plan that is in place that we are currently implementing. And in terms of Caseware the office of the LC CFO has come on board to assist us in terms of acquiring Caseware. Our finance team members are going on training to ensure that they're all aligned in terms of utilizing Caseware, so that when we finally do our reporting, everybody's aligned in terms of what needs to happen, in order to avoid the previous challenge around the mapping of information from CISPRO to Caseware. And as an entity, we are required to report based on GRAP standards. So it is a requirement that we acknowledge. It's a requirement that we ought to achieve this year. And I can assure members of this committee that we are drastically looking at improving on our audit opinion, and probably in the next financial year, we should be reporting different results from what we've reported on. But in overall, we can move to the next slide. Overall performance, I think we're doing well in the actual performance based on our primary objectives, but it's in this area that we really want to make sure that we drive SE out of this opinion. And based on these key priorities, you can see that employment opportunities for persons with disabilities are a priority. Improving on the regress audit opinion is also a priority. Like I've mentioned earlier on, that our load shedding nearly crippled us. Alternative energy source is what we're looking at. And also basically the SE is the trading entity, our legal identity, which is very important for us moving forward. And in aiding the deficit, we want to grow our sales revenue to 80 million so that we are able to finance our own operations based on our sales revenue. And I will end it here, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you. That takes care of the presentation of the DEL and the SEE. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But what I want to indicate, Marsha, and to your CEO, okay. Can I? No, it's fine. Thank you for that. But I wanted to indicate, Masha, sorry, I'm messed up by network. These slides of SEE are not numbered. I just wanted to make that. I will then request Nedlac to come in members, I've got a problem with network. So 1 minute I'm cut and I have to go to another gadget. So I would request that if I'm cut for quite a long time, if the whip can just come in for me for those couple of seconds or minutes. I will then hand over to Nedlac now to make a presentation so that we then get questions from all the presentations. Nedlac, Executive Director.
Yes, thanks, Honourable Chair. Earlier on, I was allowed to share, but all of a sudden I've been disabled. So I'm not sure if I can be able to share or if somebody is going to share the presentation.
Mr. Sakaza, what's the story?
Okay, I've made Ms. Seftel a co-host.
Okay,
so
okay. Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Greetings to the Deputy Minister and to the honourable members of the Portfolio Committee. I hope you can now see my presentation. We'll focus on our performance, also some indicators how we measure our performance, and the financial information, all of which is contained in the annual report. If you look at this slide, this really characterizes the year under review, where we were focusing on closing off our COVID-19 response, looking at social compacting. In October, in the middle of the financial year, the PCC joined Nedlac. We had some significant engagements on key bills, which are now in Parliament. And, you know, during the COVID period, there was a much greater focus on collaboration. But in the last financial year, the focus was back on policy inputs. So just here's a picture at our offices of the members of the Presidential Climate Commission in October. This picture was taken not in October, a bit later, but you can see the picture. In terms of our institutional performance, we achieved an overall target of 79%, and there were three targets that were not achieved. And mostly, I would say, for issues outside of the control of the Nedlac Secretariat, but in the control of the Nedlac social partners, something that we are addressing. So I won't go through all this in a lot of detail. This just indicates the bills that we considered, the policies that we considered or are considering, and the dialogues that we held. Those that are bold focus on the energy security work stream, which was a big focus of our work. The other important bill that we considered was the public procurement bill, which is currently in Parliament. There was also a lot of other work that we did. We have a committee that focuses on trade agreements. There was a lot of focus, as you can imagine, on freight and public transport, other issues on energy security, and our trade and industry chamber focused on a number of issues, including around, especially on SMMEs. Then if we go to the Labour Market Chamber, we considered three bills: the Public Service Amendment Bill, Public Administration Management Amendment Bill, and the Mine Health and Safety Amendment Bill. Then on the labour law reform process, it has been slow, but it is now really speeding up. Some amendments on the LRA and BCA to improve the effectiveness were considered, and the revised codes of good practice on dismissal and dismissal for operational requirements. We didn't complete them in the period under review, but we are still considering them. And we've initiated research and policy into non-standard employment relations, remote work, just transition, and the improved enforcement of awards. And once we are currently doing the research, and then we will be looking at amendments to labour law in relationship to these. Then also in the Labour Market Chamber, 33 demarcation awards were considered, a lot of oversight on the Unemployment Insurance Fund, which is ongoing. On the Section 77 of the Labour Relations Act, we finalised a revised code of good practice, there is one ongoing socioeconomic dispute around the provision of services, particularly electricity and water. And then the ILO Decent Work Country program continued with a focus on platformization of work and skills development. The development chamber, again, there were 3 bills, and now, one was ongoing on the National Water Resource Infrastructure Bill, a lot of policies, particularly relating to schools, and a number of dialogues. The list is not comprehensive here, but you can see on important issues of infrastructure and employment. We also initiated a cost of living rapid response task team, which looked at the impact of energy on food security, and including a diesel rebate for food manufacturers. The food retailers, we also asked for it, but they didn't get it this time. Maybe they will get it next year. Improving food distribution and food donations, considering the price of certain foodstuffs, a review of the fuel price formula, and proposals to minimize the cost of staple goods. In the period under review, except for the issue of the diesel rebate for food manufacturers, these were more engagements than agreements that have been reached. In terms of the COVID Rapid Response Task Team, there was a report, sorry, not today, it was launched at the summit, that records the journey of Nedlac social partners. And there is an ongoing project which should end in about the next 2 months, which really is about educating workers and employers or their representatives on how to improve occupational health and safety, particularly focusing on respiratory issues and COVID. In terms of the Presidential Climate Commission, they have 3 key areas. The first is making policy recommendations. So in the period under review, and this is the whole period, not only when they came in October, they updated the nationally determined contribution. They presented to the President a just transition framework, which was approved by Cabinet. They did an assessment of a disaster response on the KZN floods and Eastern Cape drought, and they also approved a just urban transition policy. In terms of building scientific knowledge, they did 2 briefing documents, one on the carbon border adjustment mechanism and a second one on the just transition funding mechanism. They also did a lot of advocacy work. I've listed the national advocacy events and the provincial advocacy events, so you can see that they have touched very important and different areas of the country. And they have also reached out to important stakeholders like the youth, faith leaders, and on skills, the relevant seaters and stakeholders. Then on capacity building of social partners, there was an annual policy school by organized labor and another one by community. They also attended the ILO Child Labor Conference, I think it was in May 2022. There is a leadership training program at the University of Pretoria, and organized business, they finalized an electricity pricing policy for themselves to guide their work in Nedlac. In terms of communication and knowledge management, we have a bi-monthly newsletter. We've updated our corporate identity, which you can see on the background. And we also continue to update our website and publish monthly economic and employment trends. Now, the governance task team made very important strides in the period under review. We have a new draft bill. It's not 100% finalized. We have a revised constitution and we have a revised protocol, which in relationship to the processing of bills and policy, which is already in operation. I won't go into the issues in a lot of detail, but they are here. A big focus on improving the efficiency of our structures and updating criteria for admission to Nedlac. In terms of measuring our performance, we did publish 2 versions of a parliamentary tracker, which tracked what happened to bills that had been considered in Parliament and considered in Nedlac, and where have they gone afterwards. So there were 46 bills where deliberations at Nedlac were concluded. 30% of them have not yet been introduced. 9% were either rejected by Parliament or withdrawn by the sponsoring department. 24%, this was not now, this is currently at the end of the financial year in April, were being considered. 7% had been finished, considered, and were waiting assent by the president, and 30% had been signed into law. Then we also did an annual satisfaction survey. The average is 73%, and you can see that how Nedlac has responded in terms of systems and processes. Our stakeholders said they were 78% satisfied. On governance process, 75%. And where we are low is in skills and capacity building of our social partners. This is an issue which we continue to work on. And it's often due to the busy schedules of social partners and so on, that they have not been able to take advantage of the skills and capacity building or been able to service as many of their representatives as possible. Now, we received, as you heard last week from the Auditor General, an unqualified audit with reduced findings. And you can see that in most areas we are stable. Again, you know, we went down on core operations, but these were really, I would say, technical issues which we can and should address. This also just indicates our employment equity profile. With the addition of the PCC, we are now, we will be, I think not in this picture yet, but we are now, post the end of April, over 50 staff members, and therefore we will now have to tightly comply with the Employment Equity Act. In terms of financial information, this is a summary of the information. You can see that there is a significant increase in our budget, and this is mostly as a result of the introduction of the PCC, and money was transferred from the DFE budget to the DL and to Nedlac. And here you also can see per program our expenditure per program. And the special project line item has been a project that we are now concluded, but it was a special project with the CCMA to give them additional funds so that they could manage the disputes relating to minimum wages and COVID. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Executive Director from Nedlac, and the presentation from the department. I will then hand over to members for question time. Can I get an indication? Am I audible? The network is.
Chair. Yes, you are audible, Chair.
Honorable Mdabe.
Michael Cotto.
Honorable Nontsele.
Honorable Mdabe, Honorable Kado, Honorable Nontsele.
Honorable Zuma.
And dinner, please, Chair. Come again.
Honorable Zuma, Chair.
All right.
And Eloise Diener.
I don't know whether afternoon, is it Honorable Dana?
Yes, Chair.
Honorable Zuma.
Yes,
Chair.
I've noted you, Honorable Zuma.
Oh, sorry, Chair.
No, fine. Honorable Mdabe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning to the honorable members. Chair, let's welcome the presentation by the department and its entities. However, Chair, the situation doesn't look good in terms of the performance of the department and some of its entities. Last week, we were presented with the Auditor General's report on the audit findings of both the department, Nedlac, as well as the SEE and the CCMA. But Chairperson, our point of departure from here is the performance by the department. Although they are saying that there is a slight improvement in the performance of 2021-22 financial year of 64% to 2022-23 of 72%. That is below par. What has not been presented to us is whether the targets that they are setting for themselves, do they have the capacity to achieve them, both in terms of competency by the staff that they have, as well as their capability to perform. I think if we can then clarify that, what is it that makes them perform below par? So that we would understand the nature of the challenges that they have. Secondly, Chairperson, is the issue of the department failing to adopt the ethics strategy. For quite some time now, they haven't developed the ethics strategy. That has a bearing in terms of what is currently happening in relation to, one, underperformance, two, the issue of regular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. Coupled with that, or thirdly, into that particular category, is the issue of a lack of consequence management. Now, you then sitting somewhere trying to understand the rationale behind the underperformance, the failure to deal with the issue of irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. The last point that I want to raise is around the issue of the underspending. The underspending, Chair, mainly, if you look at the presentations and the report of the Auditor General, is around the issue of the ICT. There is underspending in terms of equipment being delivered, not able to get the equipment that is supposed to be there for them to perform the task. The other point in relation to that is IT devices issued to staff. It has to be reviewed. Now, there is a serious challenge around this matter of the ICT. My proposal, Chair, would be that for that to say the challenges as they are in ICT, can we get a formal presentation that deals with the issue of ICT in the department and its entities, so that we would have a clearer picture as to what is it that makes the department underperform, with all the IT, taking into account that we are moving to artificial intelligence, yet we are supposed to be on top of the situation in dealing with these issues. But seems as if, based on the presentations that we have, IT is failing us. I will pause there for now, Chair. Maybe if the opportunity still exists, I would come back. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mtabe. Honorable Kado.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions for Nedlac. Firstly, why has the governance task team process taken so long? I know there's a slide on it, but the oral presentation didn't go into much detail about the GTT process. So if I recall, the governance task team was established in 2017, and we're now 6 years down the line. We hear very little about progress made by the task team, certainly in this committee. But I was interested to see from that slide that there is a bill that recommends updates to the criteria for admission to Nedlac. And I know this has been a source of contention for many parties in the past, the legitimacy of Nedlac because of its admissions criteria and procedures. And I wanted to know whether we could gain some insight into exactly what the bill recommends insofar as these admission criteria are concerned. And then secondly, a couple of years ago, there was talk of a re-evaluation exercise within Nedlac, a re-evaluation of all jobs and a benchmarking of Nedlac salaries to a level commensurate with other public entities of a similar size and a similar scope of work to Nedlac. Was this process ever completed? I know that, again, a few years ago, Nedlac's personnel expenditure was almost 50% of its revenue. I'd be curious to know whether that position has shifted over time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning to the Deputy Minister, the honorable members, and the guests, including the leadership of the department. Honorable Chair, some aspects of my points have been raised by Honorable Mdabe. I will just further complement with a number of proposals. The first one with regard to, let's first appreciate the presentations have been made, but just on the report, particularly from Dell, with regard to inspection and employment services. The gray area on my side, which I would want them to talk to, is the issue of underperformances by Gauteng and Limpopo. As we would all know, that we currently sitting with grave consequences of non-compliance, particularly in Gauteng. The recent incidents that have led to loss of lives are a pointer that says we need, for instance, to check up our work. We take note for the fact that, for instance, the recent deaths could have been avoided had our interventions been followed. But the question would be, if, for instance, the section continues to underperform, particularly in that area, how many more deaths and serious injuries would be taking place? Similarly, in Limpopo, the same can be said, particularly against the backdrop that we have visited the province during our oversight visit, wherein we picked up a number of challenges. Then the question of underperformance would have to be further clarified, that is by the department with regard to inspection and employment services. Going back to the issue of the audit report that has come out, I think there are three standouts to the report, particularly with regard to how the department has performed. The first one relates to the failure to implement consequence management, which is an area that has effectively placed the department where it currently is. Because if you look in terms of the audit outcomes, that is the negative audit outcomes with regard to the department, they point to the similar instances that have happened previously. And that led to pointers or red lights being raised with regard to that area. So we would need a thorough explanation as to why repetitive failures have in fact occurred within the department. Also on the issue of the ICT, which Honorable Mdabe has raised, the key question there is with regard to the department failing to follow its own decisions with regard to that. That is the ICT area. So the question again would be, why has the department failed to comply with its own audit action plans, including the audit action plans that were given by or developed by the AG? The issue of the court judgment as well, I think the department need to take us into confidence as to what has happened to the court judgment relating to the same matter, that is the ICT, so that we are able to understand as to why, for instance, the department continues to get this matter instead of being resolved, to get it stalled. Chair, we must also, as we speak to the audit reports, also raise our concern with regard, for instance, to the second area, because I said I will raise a number of 3 areas, which is the question of material misstatements on goods and services and related party disclosures that were identified previously, but again have been carried through to this audit period. The issue of irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, which also is another gray area that has been raised. The key question again goes back to the first point that we have raised, the issue of the failure of consequence management. Why the department has continued to commit or allow itself to be subjected to the same negative outcomes that the AG has pointed out. In this regard, as I'm also in support of the steps that Honorable Dabe has raised, is that we need also to note that there was, in fact, an architectural review report that was made by PwC. And perhaps if the department can also take us into confidence by presenting that report, because the report talks to the situation with regard to the 2 funds that have also contributed to the negative audit outcomes because of the failure of the submission of their financial statements. Similarly, Chair, it would be important for the department also to help us understand much more clearly as to what are the underlying reasons as to why these 2 entities, that is the UIF and the compensation fund, continue to, in fact, to have this negative delay that overall impacts on the audit outcomes of the department. Presenting that report of PwC, we assume or hope that we would be able to get a much more better picture with regard to the negative audit outcomes that continue to indicate or to show the challenges the department is going through. Chair, in concluding, on behalf of the ANC, we would want to extend our support to Honorable Minister in absentia and his team for the steps that they have taken in dealing with the Tuja report, particularly with regard to the steps that the Honorable Minister has taken in ensuring that the department, in particular the UIF, is in fact saved from losing about 5 billion rand, which could have been lost had the project proceeded. In this regard, we must congratulate the Honorable Minister and his team for the good efforts that they've made. And perhaps the steps that have been taken should be further expedited so that we have a finality very soon on the matter. As I conclude, therefore, Chair, we would want to also to request that the issues relating to the pending reconfiguration of the department should also, inclusive of the PwC report, be presented to the portfolio committee as soon as possible. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nontsele. Honorable Dana.
Thank you, Chair. Most of my questions have been covered, especially with regards to consequence management, but I should actually ask who has to face the consequences for poor consequence management, and maybe we should start there. But I'm covered, Chair. Thank you. I'll listen to the answers.
Thank you, Honorable Zuma.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good day, Chairperson. Good day, honorable members, our guest, the DM. Chairperson, I want to pose a few questions to the department. Do all the provincial offices of DEL have provincial risk committees? That's my first question. Perhaps connected with that first question, if these provincial risk committees are there, is the head office comfortable or happy with the manner in which these provincial risk committees are constituted? How many PES buses are there in each provinces? Connected with that question again, what are these buses used for? Again, are there any future plans to procure more buses? Chair, we live in load shedding times that, among others, disrupt crucial services to the people. Then the question I want to ask, what is the alternative source of power that kicks in and when load shedding hits labor centers and service points? If its generators are all in labor centers having generators, if not, when will they be supplied to ensuring that service delivery is not negatively impacted? In actual fact, how many generators is the department have? Are they all in good working situation? Chairperson, lastly, Chairperson, it is very confusing to me that the department can sit with this huge challenge for these many years. And this reminds me of its two entities, Compensation Fund and UIF, that sits with the PIC and Investment Challenge to a point that the annual financial statement get delayed year after year to be submitted to Audit General. Chairperson, where I'm on the issue of ICT, the harm and reputational damage have been caused by the chaotic ICT environment in the department is miserable. The pain that this state of affairs of ICT environment is inflicting to the workers of Venomous, and things cannot remain like this. They must be changed, and that change must come now. Chair, there is nothing at all that stops this portfolio committee from calling all those involved in this space of department IT. The portfolio committee has both rights and authority to invite CETA to shed light on their matter. This is a transitional department. It deals by extension its entities like two funds. Compensation Fund, UIF deal with billions of rands. But more importantly, they have to compensate and give back money to save lives. And this cannot be done by a system which is in disorderly. Lastly, Chair, secondly, Chairperson, let this portfolio committee have conversation with Tech Mahindra and others. They must come to us and show us the value of the money of their services, because where they are seated, we just see unwanted expenditure, wasteful, irregular, and fruitless. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Zuma. From my side, I just want, Masha, you talked in terms of consequence management, its failures. You touched on the issue of capacity. Capacity from which side? From the department committee that are dealing with this, or from where? Can we be more clarified? because just saying it's because of capacity that these consequence management cases are being delayed. Can you unpack this area of capacity? I will then give you time to respond on the questions that have been raised. Thank you. Over to you, whoever wants to start, whether Nedlac or the department.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've got the bulk of the questions, so let's start. If you will allow me just to direct the choir a little bit. I'm going to talk about the performance information and all the questions around that. I would like the Chief Inspector just to take us through the issues raised by Honourable Nonsele about the issues in Johannesburg and the underperformance in terms of IES and the loss of lives as well as that. I will talk about consequence management failure as well. I'll ask the CFO to take us through the responses to the audit questions or the questions on the Auditor General reporting. Some comments were made, and I've taken note of those comments. For example, the architectural review report and the reconfiguration. And then the CFO will also respond as to the issues of the alternative energy sources. I'll respond to the PES buses. So, Chair, if you'll allow me then to start. The performance, Honourable Ndabe's question regarding the performance that is below par. Yes, we agree. 72% is not acceptable. We are working very hard to improve it because we feel that this department has shown that it can achieve 95% and higher, so we would want to go there again. When we set targets, we do it clearly, as you know, as per the capacity available to us. The competency to achieve is there, and I think also the capability to perform is there. The areas where there was underperformance was around Program 1 in terms of ICT, and that we have already sourced assistance from experts to help us with that, as well as then in terms of labour policy and industrial relations, where the underperformance was, as you heard, the EE regulations, which we could not publish because the law had not been assented to, as well as the issue of the Child Labour Conference. But we have the capacity. There are areas where there are challenges in terms of the competencies, but as you will hear a little bit later when I talk about specifically some of the investigations that we do. The failing to adopt the ethics strategy, this was adopted, but it was not done in the time frame, and that is why it's reflected as a non-achievement. But I agree with the statements that you have made. The underspending around ICT, I think there was a request that this becomes a formal presentation, so I would not want to respond on that at this moment. The Honourable Zuma's question regarding the PES buses, firstly, the risk committees. As far as I'm aware, all the provinces have got functioning risk committees. I'm not sure about Northern Cape, but the CDPO is here. He could correct me. I think they have a committee, but they do not have a permanent chairperson appointed as yet. But as I say, if I'm wrong, he could please correct me. We have got 14 PES buses at the moment, and there's at least one per province. And then in the bigger provinces, there are 2 buses, 2 buses each. They used mainly for PES because the funding was received from the European Union, if I'm correct, the E4E project. Then there was the CFO will respond to that. The capacity for investigations. Honourable Chair, some of these investigations are very complex in terms of syndicates being involved, people who are using all sorts of very complex financial, what is the word now that I can use, financial processes to defraud and so forth. And for that, we need to seek outside assistance. We do not have capacity in-house to investigate that, and that is often where the delay then comes from. So that is why I say the capacity constraints there. The complex cases with where there are syndicates, etc., those are complex. Chair, I'll allow now, as I indicated to my colleagues to respond to what, to take the first matter. I think the first one was the issue of, let's take the CFO because he's got quite a number of matters to respond to, followed by the Chief Inspector to respond to the questions there. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Chair. The first one that I will deal with is the underspending, more especially on the equipment that needed to be delivered by the ICT. I think after COVID, there has been a challenge in some of our devices, which are not manufactured locally, the laptops in particular. So we had some challenges there where the delivery was not made on time, which resulted in our capital expenditure as presented in the financial report when I was presenting the reasons for underspending. There were delays there that were experienced. Unfortunately, they then led us not to spend the money that was earmarked due to late delivery of the IT. On the audit report that was cited as presented by the AG as well, consequence management, I think the COO has dealt with that. The ICT also was also touched on there. More especially on the ICT is the transactions that happened there. The non-compliance with CETA, which also was problematic, or was found to be problematic, which we are meeting with CETA to iron out, because the procurement on the IT is not just regulated by the normal procurement of government. There's also a CETA Act that needs to be followed. The department needs to understand how CETA works, and as the CFO have taken the initiative to lead this engagement so that we are singing the same hymn book with CETA, so that such procurement is first tested with CETA first before it can be tested with the normal procurement of government, purely because the CETA Act prescribes so. It also describes mandatory services and non-mandatory services that need to be procured through CETA or with CETA's assistance. Audit action plan. Yes, after every audit we do develop an action plan, and it is monitored at high level. However, there has been some challenges in terms of addressing the action plan to the T, which the DG is dealing with. I will have to inquire about the court judgment on ICT. I'm not sure whether maybe some of my colleagues will assist me there. I think my knowledge on that one is quite thin. The material misstatement on the financial statements. Yes, in finance there was an error that happened in one of the transactions. Unfortunately, it was a sizable amount, which was caused by us not splitting the percentage, not applying our principle of splitting the expense to the funds as well. Unfortunately, it resulted us having to revise the financial statements. Unfortunately, it was not the only one. All the other findings as well from the ICT required some adjustments to our financial statements, which I think we are, in terms of the finances, we are working very, very close to improve the reviews, monthly reviews of the expenditure to make sure that whatever needs to be split is done, is actually done, and we can pick it up early. And I'm also hoping that in terms of the audit action plan, the other managers as well, because the material misstatement is not just the finance, it happens on all offices and sections that work with money. They all need money to operate, and we need to improve our processes. Mainly, I think the main one being the office of the CIO. That also touches on irregular expenditure as well. I think the majority of it, as it was indicated by the Auditor General, it emanates there at head office. Not so many transactions, but the few that happens, unfortunately, the ICT operations don't come cheap. So their contracts comprises of, or totals, one contract totals a couple of millions. So if something goes wrong, the impact is huge, mainly on SAP, the ones that where we are experiencing some few challenges that we are dealing with. The alternative power source. Yes, the management has tasked the CFO to work on the alternative power source for the offices. However, the setback has been, whilst we're at the advanced stage of this project, we were instructed to cut our budget, and unfortunately, the budget that is mainly affected is the capital payments, which involved the amount that was identified by the CFO that we can tap into in terms of providing generators for all the offices. We have gone some way in terms of putting some generators in some offices. I would like to request an opportunity to provide the offices that have already got generators, and also in that report indicate whether they are in working order. The report is not handy with me right now, so I'm not going to be in a position to provide it now, but it's just an opportunity to provide that report in a few days. I think I've covered the issues that that the COO has directed to me. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can ask the Chief Inspector then to just respond to the questions raised by the Honourable Nonsele. Ms. Reiter.
Thank you, COO, and good afternoon to the Chairperson and the honourable members. With regard to the question on inspection and enforcement services, I would just like to indicate that Gauteng is the most improved province in the last financial year. Of all the provinces, they have achieved their target in all the different legislation that we administer, where we do inspections and enforcement on. The two provinces that are the ones who have not achieved the overall targets was Limpopo and Northern Cape. And in Limpopo, it was mainly related to PCA, whereas with Northern Cape, it was a PCA payroll audits as well as occupational health and safety. Just also to respond to the number of incidents that is in Gauteng, If we look at Gauteng makes up only 23% currently of the Section 31 occupational health and safety inspections nationally. They have currently a total of 27 Section 31 inspections that are open, where they are busy finalizing it. But what we are also looking at is how do we prevent injuries and diseases, and that we need to do through also advocacy, as well as inspections, and then lastly enforcement. So there is a preventative strategy that we have developed so that we can look at prevention of injuries and diseases. But I would like to indicate that there's been a significant improvement in Gauteng overall for IES. Thank you, COO.
Thank you. Chair, the DDG for Corporate Services has indicated that she would like to respond to the question on the risk committees in provinces. And then I would just like to, I forgot to add, when we spoke about the consequential management, that no request for the condonation or this recommendation for irregular, fruitless, wasteful expenditure is done by the accounting officer unless proof of consequential management is attached. This is what we have implemented to ensure that consequential management does indeed take place. So nothing happens if that is not attached as proof. But if you will allow DDG Corporate Services just to respond to the risk committee, please. Thanks, DDG.
Thank you so much, COO. Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to the honorable members. It's Bahumi Matebesi here, the DDG Corporate Services. Probably before I go to the question on the risk management, I need to just point out that in addition to what the COO has said about the caseload and our need to get assistance from outside, we've actually appointed a panel of forensic investigators into the department so that they can help us speed up the issues of investigations. And these appointments, I think they were made, we made not less than 10 companies or institutions that are going to be on the panel, and then we'll be using them on a rotational basis. That will assist us in dealing with the forensic cases and other fraud and corruption cases within the department. And then the other question that came from the honorable member was about the functionality of the risk committees in the provinces. Yes, we do have the risk committees in each and every province. The only province that doesn't have at the moment, it's the Northern Cape, and the position has been advertised, and I was informed that they are in the process of filling that position. But the composition of the risk committees in the provinces are such that we have an independent chairperson. That's a person who's not part of the executive, and then the members are part of the exco of the province. And we believe that they are all functional. What we do also, like at the moment, the risk director is in one of she makes visits, pays visits to the different provincial risk committees. She goes there to provide support and also just to give them some kind of make observations on how they run the committees and also be part of the committee. So we are happy with the way they are running at the moment, except that we need to make sure that Northern Cape is filled. The position is filled. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've responded to all the questions except the questions raised by Honourable Dr. Cardo to Nedlac. So if you will allow then the Executive Director to respond to those. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Honourable Chair and honourable members. So in respect of the questions asked, the first question was related to if we could provide some insights into what the bill recommends around representation. Just to indicate that we haven't yet 100% agreed on the bill, but there really are three areas. The first is that the bill clarifies criteria for admission. And one of the key changes is that in respect of the community constituency, criteria for admission would be federations of associations of, for example, youth or women or climate change organizations. The second area is that while the bill will set out the key criteria, there are also, for example, thresholds in the criteria. And the minister, after consultation with Nedlac, will be able to determine or amend thresholds. So, for example, at the moment, the threshold for a union federation is 300,000 members. And the bill provides that the minister could amend it to 400,000 members, as things change. And similarly, there are thresholds for organized business. And then the third area is that the parties can decide who their representatives are to the governing structures of Nedlac, rather than them being appointed by the minister. And then also just to indicate that not in the bill, but in the constitution, clear processes have been set out for admission of new federations as well as termination. I hope that is clear, but when the bill is finalized, it will obviously make its way to this committee. Then, Honourable Chair, the other question was about whether jobs had been reevaluated and salaries had been benchmarked a couple of years ago. Yes, absolutely. It was done. And in fact, we are in the process of doing a review just to ensure that our salaries are still competitive and benchmarked against similar public entities, and also to ensure that there is benchmarking and correlation with the PCC staff members that are now part of Nedlac. Honourable Carter asked, whether our personal expenditure is still about 50% of revenue. Yes, that is the case. And it's mostly the case because previously there was a significant amount of our expenditure which was devoted to airfares and travel because our meetings were physical. And now those costs have all been, don't happen as much as before, because just like with Parliament, a lot of the work happens online. So if you don't have certain expenditure like travel and so on, then obviously the personal expenditure percentage would go up. However, this is something that we have discussed and, with the National Treasury, and they are comfortable with our percentage of personal expenditure. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, E.T. Nedlac. Are there any other? There's a question that was asked by Honorable Nonsele, and the CFO seemed not to be quite have a knowledge of that, the issue around the court case. I would have thought that the department will share some light or whatever around that. Masha, in terms of ICT.
Thank you, Chair. I'm breaking my head here to think which court case. I've also requested the DDG Corporate Services, and can we revert and respond in writing to this question? Because I can't, unless the Honourable Mansele can give me the names of the parties involved against or the department against the parties, because I'm breaking my head here thinking which court case and I can't get to the answer. So if it will be acceptable, can we respond in writing?
I hope I hope the sponsor of the question is fine with your request of responding on that in writing. And I hope it's not going to delay, because there is a proposal that has been put and by Honorable Mdabe, and I think it was also reflected on by Honorable Zuma, in terms of of requesting this company that deals with the ICT, but the CFO has raised something which is quite challenging for me, the non-compliance of the procedures in terms of the ICT, which I don't want to assume that non-compliance is in relation to the department not being in compliance with the SETA Act. Can I be clarified on that so that we really have an understanding? This non-compliance, is it referring to the department?
Chair, I will allow the sorry.
Which deals with the department in terms of the unit that is it the ICT unit, the ICT unit that is not in compliance with the SETA Act. Obviously, that would then be the department. Can we get clarity on that?
Certainly, Chair. I'm going to ask the CFO to respond, and then the DDG Corporate Services to add, should she have any additions. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, Chair. In terms of SETA, is mandated through the SETA Act that the ICT procurement goes through them, goes through SETA. My thinking is that they were designed to take advantage of the procurement, ICT procurement in government. It further states that there is mandatory procurement, security systems like bus locates and PERSA, but it tabulates what needs to go through them as mandatory services. Furthermore, it further states that there are also non-mandatory services that the departments may procure through them. And there are also further instruction notes issued by them. So to me, it then indicates that even before getting into normal procurement of 3 quotations, ICT need to test that procurement with SETA. And unfortunately, the relationship with SETA hasn't that been great, and the analysis by the department on the procurement has not been that thorough. Hence, the involvement of CFO. I've invited I've had some engagement with SETA to really understand their engagement model, so that we can adhere to the letter. And most of the ICT, even for the funds as well, is undertaken centrally because of our intertwined systems with the funds and the provincial offices. That's why the procurement from ICT is quite a sizable amount. So if things are not done right for one or few transactions, the impact is quite huge on the irregular expenditure. Hence the process, the direction that I'm putting forward. Thanks.
Chairperson, our acting CIO is in the meeting, and he's got the details as to what this matter was all about. If you will allow, I would want him to give us a full explanation so that the committee can understand the details of what went wrong with this procurement. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think it is, because it's quite alarming, the irregular the amount of the irregular and wasteful expenditure, which have risen which is very high because of the issues of the ICT.
Thank you, Chairperson. It's Mr. Vishalan Pillay. I'm going to ask him to explain in detail what was it that was wrong, so that you all have the same understanding. Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. Pillay.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. Thank you, COO. With regards to the CETA compliance to the Act, it was a particular procurement transaction that happened around the Managed Information Security Services. There was a misunderstanding as to whether it is a mandatory service provided by CETA and whether CETA can indeed provide the service as an entity to the department. There were engagements that did happen with CETA around the procurement of this security services, cybersecurity services. Although when AGSA had performed the audit, evidence of those engagements were not formalized by a letter from CETA giving the department permission to go out and procure the services, which occurred in 2021 towards the latter part of the year. And then the invoicing and activation of the services moved into the year under audit, and therefore it was picked up as being the current status that it is in as irregular. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't see Honorable Nontsele. Your hand is up. I don't know whether it's a legacy hand.
No, Chair, it's not a legacy hand.
Okay.
Maybe, Chair, let me first say I welcome the responses that have been made, and also that the department would go back and look into their own records with regard to the case matter. The second point is that I've made 2 points that they have not responded to, which is in terms of commitment from their side, because I've requested that they should take the portfolio committee into confidence, meaning in the annex presentation with regard to the restructuring of the department. Then the second one was with regard to the PwC architectural report regarding the 2 entities, that is the UIF and the compensation fund. So they have not responded to both of those 2 areas, which I've requested as well that it should be presented to the portfolio committee. Thank you, Chair.
Marsha?
Chair, I have to apologize. I thought that there would be a formal request from the committee, and that's why I didn't respond. So I'm sorry about that. The issue of the reconfiguration, how far we are, a presentation can be made. As insofar as the architectural review is concerned, I know that this project has been finalized, and that there is a proposed macro structure. But I would have to consult as to how and when we can make this presentation. So I will come back to the committee with a possible date or how we can do that. Perhaps we can combine the 2 in one presentation. But I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much. I would GM, if in the absence of some follow-ups, Honorable Nontsele, is it a follow-up or is it the legacy hand? Because your hand is still up.
Sorry, Chair, it's a legacy hand.
Okay. In the absence of other, I will hand over. I will allow you to make some few remarks.
No, thank you, Chair. I think all our presenters so far has been able to present what is before and what is it that we are doing to make sure that we mitigate those issues as raised by the Office of the Auditor General. So I think where we, as always, where honorable members might not necessarily be completely satisfied with the responses, I'm sure we can submit such information through the Office of the Chairperson to say those honorable members can submit other information, then we can respond accordingly. So that all honorable members must feel satisfied that we are indeed doing what we said we will do and promise that we will do as the department. But we thank you, Honorable Chairperson, for having given us this opportunity to come and account to the portfolio committee. Thank you, Wati, and all honorable members. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. What is very much concerning as we wrap up our meeting, what is very much concerning, at the time when, from my office, at the time when the country is in quite a very challenging space, financial and otherwise, the department is paying for services that are not rendered, which has made it to be at 200 and something thousand irregular compared, it's 100,000 more compared to the last presentation by the Office of the Auditor General. That DM is quite unacceptable. Because we are expected to stand there and lobby for the department to be given more funds if possible. But how are we going to be? It's very hard that you have irregular expenditure that have doubled up, and the culprit is IT. So I think we need to be, I'm sure before we rise, I will have to check if these people that are dealing with IT are not to come in between we adopt our report. I don't want to, I think much have been said. It has always been said since we started in 2019, the issue of UIF and a compensation fund. We will, and it touches into the ability and the capacity of the leadership of this department. Whether really, it's just unfortunate that the executive authority and the accounting officer are not part of this meeting, because I would have loved to, maybe we'll raise that. I will raise what I want to raise in the meeting on Friday. It can be, because at the end of the day, it's also the integrity of this, of us as members of parliament. Whether there is something that we are missing, or reports are structured in such a way that we are not able to pick up. It can be almost 5 years saying one thing about these two entities. I think that there is something where I want to commend members of parliament in this sixth administration is their ability to be able to pick up and ensure that we don't allow issues of these two entities to be put under the carpet. And I want to repeat what I once said, that since 2009, that some of us became members of parliament, that UIF and compensation fund has been elevated to the point that now everybody is making a cry. Everybody is loud. But for years, people were, and I'm not implying that people are not to raise issues. I am not implying. Maybe in the next administration, some difficult questions and some difficult issues that have been raised by the stakeholders, trade union and business, will then have to be looked into. But it's quite challenging. I'm saying this with a heavy heart. It's quite challenging that when the country, I want to labor on this, when the country is dealing with all the issues, Treasury is putting up some regulations and whatever, and you still have a department whose unit has made the irregular and wasteful expenditure to skyrocket in the matter. And we are then given now a response that says the non-compliance of the procurement. And Mr. Pillay has explained. Should I say, there's nothing that I have gathered from what you have explained. Absolutely nothing. What is it in this IT that everybody who explains about it explains something? Maybe I'm the only one. Members will say it in appropriate time. Maybe I'm the only one who doesn't understand. But I don't get the gist that is making me to be able to be confident when I am asked, when I stand there and put the report, I'm going to be able to explain to the public what are these challenges. And Masha and Mr. Pillay and the CFO, when you come back, we must get a better explanation. It can't be. Because this is the gist. As one member has said, that we are going to what is this thing that they call intelligent? The world of work has changed. The world of work has changed. And IT is going to be the. What is happening in this department? Are you unable to put to us out there that the shenanigans that were part of the department initially, that are outside there, are able to manipulate the system? We must be told, so that members of parliament are able, and people that are serviced by this department are able really to understand. The last one for me is that which was not explained, maybe at an appropriate time, about Northern Cape. Why is it that they don't have, I will term, a stable chair of the risk committee? At an appropriate time, we must get a response on that. Having said that, members, We are meeting on Friday. We must have a CCMA in productivity SA, so that then we prepare for our report. I will try at the office of the chair to check if on Friday we don't call whoever that we must call who deals with the IT, because I don't think it will be fair and it will be correct of us to stand there and said nothing tangible about a unit that has put this department into this quagmire it is in terms of irregular and wasteful expenditure. Having said that, thank you very much, members. We will meet on Monday. On Friday. Until we meet on Friday, our meeting stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank